Hey everyone, so over the last couple days I'd been on a ring making blitz. So these are the base bands for spinner rings or fidget rings. And I had some leftover material that I decided to kind of stress a little bit. So I work hardened the Argentium here and then ended up snapping it. And it has a texture, so the test here is to see if I can get the texture to line up and to fuse or additionally solder it back together. So I'm just going to see how it fits to begin with. I might have to straighten them out a little bit or flatten them out a bit. And because these pieces are so small, I'm just going to be using my little blazer torch and heating the metal up with the little pinpoint control rather than going in hot and heavy with the Syndico. So you can see that the metal turned orange and at the same time the Sharpie marker disappeared. So that is a good indication using either or technique if you don't have a Sharpie marker. So now I'm going to quench them, cool them off, and then I'm going to, because these have a textured pattern on them, I don't want to necessarily be using metal pliers on them to straighten them or flatten them out, and so I'll be using my Delrin pliers to do that. Okay, now that I've got both pieces straightened, let's have a look and see how they line up. It's got quite a bit of a jog in there, so I might have to straighten the larger piece a little bit more so you can see that it's not a straight band, but the fit is not too bad. You can see there's a massive gap, but that's nothing to be concerned about. I think the back actually fits a little bit better, so we'll be soldering it or fusing it from the back to begin with. I'm going to be using my solderite board to fuse it together, and you really want to have a nice flat section of a board, and I really don't have too much of a flat section left on this board anymore. It's almost past its due here for fusing, and so let's just get that lined up, and I'll be back once I have that done. Okay, so that's pretty much as good as it's going to get. You can see that it's a massive crack, and there is basically only a few places that it's touching. So let's put on some flux. I'm going to be using Rhonda Coriel's purple flux. You can get that from Rio Grande. It's formulated especially for Argentium, and I think for granulation. So just going to give it a spritz here and then a quick heat with the blazer torch. And I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to, come in there with the Syndico torch or just use the blazer. The blazer is going to have to be pinpoint control over the broken area. But in order to get the metal up hot enough, I might need to, because it's such a big band of silver, I'm going to probably have to use the Syndico to give it a really good overall heating. So the flux is starting to liquefy here. Now I'm actually going to go in there with the blazer for the more pinpoint control. So the Sundico heated it up nicely. It's starting to get shiny and melting a little bit here, so I'm going to focus the heat on this side here. So it's already started to bond a little bit. If I move that, well, yeah, so it's moving together. I don't want to heat it, whoops, right out of view here. I don't want to heat it on the other side because that has the texture on it. So now I'm going to very carefully come in with the Sundico one more time because I've got it pretty much lined up, which is what I want. And I can get a much more even heating with the Sundico. And just focusing on that seam, back to the blazer for pinpoint control. And just back and forth, crisscrossing over the seam. Crisscrossing, don't keep it on one section for too long. It's starting to melt. Okay, so it's still got a pretty big gap there. I can see that. Right off camera again. Okay, so this is where I'm going to, so it's attached, but there's still a big gap there because it was so jagged. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually come in there with some stick solder and flood that, that gap in there. I'll just show you how big that gap is. It's massive. Like that's, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be using Argentium hard solder. Okay, hopefully that showed up on camera. So you can still see the little crack there, but I think with with a tiny bit more solder. So that looks pretty good from the reverse side. Let's see what it looks like on the other side. Let's maybe get that pickled up so you can see that the back is good. The front has a little bit of a divot in there. So I'm not sure. Well, let's try the Syndico. And bring the solder up to the surface. So you need to be very careful when you're trying to do this with a texture, because obviously you don't want to melt your texture. And I'm using hard solder so that is also going to affect how that looks pretty good actually. Okay, let's heat it up with the blazer. And since it's still hot, okay, so this is where I'm going to come in with my soldering pick. Just push the metal around a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Just wait for that to cool. Now, it's not going to be 100% perfect, obviously, because it was a very jagged crack. Now, let's get that pickled up, and then we'll see what it looks like after pickling. Okay, I've got the ring band semi-formed here. This is where the broken seam is, and let's see if I can find and this is the seam that needs to be soldered. So you can see it's pretty close. I'm still going to use hard solder going in here. And let's get some hard solder. And for this, I'm just going to use my little blazer torch. I'll bring in here a bit for you. obviously I need to be mindful of that other seam that has the hard solder that bonded it all back together again, which is on the other side here. Maybe I should flip it over and then you can see that seam. Okay, there it is. You can see that nicely. And then that will be the new one there. Okay, I'm just going to give it another little shot of flux. And you can see how oxidized my stick solder is. I didn't clean it beforehand, I never do. So I'm just waiting for the solder to get a bit, or the flux to get glassy, which it's there. And then I'm going to heat it from the back side. Make sure that runs all the way down to the bottom. And I think my torch is actually a little bit low on fuel. It shouldn't take that long, so I'm just going to do what I shouldn't do and hit it from the front side here. There we go. And there's a little tiny blob of solder on there, but I'll just heat that up and okay, let's let that cool for a bit because it is hot, and then we'll quench it. And then we'll have a look and see. Okay, so that is our new seam, and that is somewhere in there is our fixed seams. All right, so let's get that pickled up and then we'll see what it looks like. Here's the ring after it's come out of the pickle, and I've just given it a brass brushing. This is the intentional seam, and this is the, where is it? Yeah, there's the broken seam right there. Next test would be to see how it turns out in this went through the ring stretcher, which I used just to shape it, but I'm going to probably try putting it through the flaring tool and see how that works out. So there it is flared, and it withstands the extra stress from flaring.